Welcome to this week's subject. We are going to be going into tax deductions for pet groomers, such as yourself. This is often the most asked question in the Facebook group, as many are new groomers, as well as also some established wanting to know what can they take as business deductions. So let's go forward. Before we actually get forward, I do want to put out a disclaimer is that I'm providing some general information on this subject, but it is important that you do check with your tax professional. In some areas, there could be different requirements or regulations, so I would definitely make sure that you reach out to your tax professional if you have any questions. But I will be talking about more of the common expenses that pet grooming businesses will face. One term that you will hear a lot from your tax preparer regarding any kinds of expenses is in order for you to be able to deduct them, they need to be ordinary and necessary. Ordinary is an expense that is common and accepted in your industry. That would be your grooming supplies. That would be the cost of your employees if you are servicing more clients. And the other is necessary. And this is important too. Some things may seem ordinary to you. For example, I know that there are some mobile groomers or even the salon groomers that think that stopping to get a Starbucks coffee is ordinary because other pet grooming businesses do that. But is it really necessary? And the other idea is that the fact of the matter is that you may be spending money on items like that when it's better to go into your own pocket. And this is definitely something to consider when you are budgeting. So a necessary expense is one that's helpful and appropriate for your trade and business. So if you're a mobile groomer, a necessary expense is that you need to have a vehicle and the vehicle expenses that includes. So these are the 5 common types of deductions. I did kind of lump some of them together, like the general business expenses. You're going to be seeing quite a number of different expenses for that. We have equipment and tools, your uniforms and protective gear, as well as training and education and vehicle expenses. And this is really, in some ways, there are a lot more expenses that I may not get into it, but I did try to cover all of the most common ones. Some of your general business expenses. Of course, this is your grooming supplies, whether it's shampoos, conditioners, etc. Those are all considered grooming supplies. You're also going to be having other business supplies. You're going to have janitorial expenses. You're also going to have office supplies that may not be here, but it is included within a general business expense. If you are hiring employees, the cost of hiring, paying them, and this does include the payroll taxes and payroll services. Your advertising and marketing expenses, as well as business insurance. And like I said, that this is just a little bit of some of the general business expenses that you can take. For equipment and tools, these are the equipment and the tools that you need to do your grooming. You're going to have varying amounts of equipment. You're going to have some that are very expensive, like your vehicles. If you're a mobile groomer, you may have special tables, grooming tables. Those are all I considered equipment. And tools, of course, are those clippers and scissors and stuff like that. There is what we call the safe harbor rule, that any kind of equipment that is less than $2,500 can actually be expensed in the year that you purchased them. So that if you perhaps purchased a grooming table for $2,000, it's one of those automatic lifts and stuff like that, you don't have to put that as a depreciable item. So that means you can actually take that expense all at once. While if you have an item that is over $2,500, that's when you're going to have to put them in as an asset. You're able to take the depreciation expense, and then what happens is that as each year passes, the basis, which means the cost of the piece of equipment, will go down to eventually zero. And then what happens is that if you sell that piece of equipment, you may have a capital gain. This is one of the biggest reasons why I do suggest working with a tax professional, because there are different ways to take the depreciation. There are depreciation where you can take it all up front. You can take it over the 5 years. You can do it straight line, which means each year it's the same amount, or there's what we call the accelerate. And I am going to be doing a special video on depreciation so you get a better idea of that. But a tax professional can actually help you see what works best for you. And one of the things that I am usually concerned about is that some businesses may buy a large piece of equipment and they are told by the seller that, hey, you could take the depreciation all up front. Yes, you can do that. However, once you do that, if you get rid of that piece of equipment before the lifespan of that, which is for most equipment, it's usually 5 years. So if you take all the depreciation up front, let's say that you purchased yourself a mobile grooming van, and I have seen where they are over $100,000. Well, if you take the depreciation all up front, yeah, it's going to probably wipe out any kinds of taxes at all for your item. But what happens if a year or two down the line you realize that mobile grooming isn't for you and you sell it? Well, you took a lot of expenses the first year. That is going to have to be figured in. And what they do with that is they call that a recapture. And the other thing is that you're going to have likely a capital gain, which means that you may have taxes on that. Definitely, if you are dealing with expensive equipment for your business, don't try to TurboTax it. Otherwise, you may find it's a lot difficult to fix after the fact. So uniforms and protective gear. Most of the groomers that I work with, they are purchasing uniforms. In order to take deductions for uniform, they really need to be specific to your business. Scrubs, for example, have become such common street wear that the IRS could come back and ask to see it. And if they just see the scrubs with nothing else showing your business, they can disallow it. So my suggestion is, if you do purchase uniforms for yourself, to have something that shows your business on them. Also, as I stated, general street clothing is not allowed. So if you're purchasing leggings or jeans or whatever else, even shoes, you have to really be careful because those could be disallowed. In the case of shoes, regular sneakers, or sneakers that just feel good, because you are on your feet a lot, but if they are not specialized, they may not be allowed. So if it is an issue and you are saying, you know what, I want to make sure that my feet stay in good condition because I'm on them all the time, check with your doctor. Have them write out a prescription. It's not something that you have to turn in, but keep it with your paperwork so that if you take that deduction and you're ever audited, you can show that to the IRS and the IRS will likely allow it. But if you just purchased a name brand sneaker for yourself because they do feel comfortable and you don't have any other documentation, the IRS may say no. Training and education. This goes for you as well as any employees that you have. It does not include education to get you into, specifically yourself, into grooming. For example, if your prior career was in business and you decided to go into grooming, the cost of your grooming education to get you to that level is not deductible. However, once you become a groomer and you're working to improve your skills, that is allowed. And many of you attend the grooming events like Groom Expo, etc. And the other expenses that you can take that kind of go into this would be your travel costs, which is that if you are having to fly or drive, etc., to this area, plus your hotel, those would be considered business expenses. Now, in the sense of driving, and we're going to cover the vehicles next, you want to make sure that you are documenting. So this is where you want to have that little log that says, on this date, drove from home, your address, to Hershey, Pennsylvania for the Groomers Expo, and then back. So you wouldn't want to have the mileage for that. And always with the IRS, the more documentation you have, the better, so that if you are ever audited, but you can show the backup information, they will more likely allow it versus if you have no backup documentation, they may just say no. So we're going to get into vehicle expenses, and I will probably cover this in another one because this is such a complex issue, but I just wanted to give you some of the basics today. When you use your vehicle for business purposes, you can deduct a portion of the expenses. And a lot of it will depend on what kind of a business you have. If you have a pet grooming salon or if you have a home grooming salon, pretty much the vehicle that you're going to be used is your personal vehicle, and the best method usually for that would be the standard method. So if you needed to go from your salon to the store to pick up supplies, you can take that deduction, those miles. But an important thing to realize is that commuting costs, that means that because you have a salon, just these mileage from your home to the salon is considered commuting, so that is not allowed. Now, if you're on the way, you are going to pick some things up from your home to the store is not allowed as a deduction, but the mileage from the store to your salon and any other business travel within that day is allowed. So one of the things definitely is you want to keep a log. And usually the log is pretty much having the purpose of your travel. Where are you going? How many miles? And also this for the standard method is that because it's cents per mile, it is actually covering all of your expenses under that. So you don't take the standard method and then depreciate a vehicle. Now the other one is the actual method. And this is usually what I suggest for mobile groomers, because as a mobile groomer, your vehicle is your shop. It is getting you from one place to the other. So you're going to have more expenses. You will likely have a larger investment, 100,000 plus mobile van versus a used vehicle that you can use for the standard method. There's no comparison. Plus, a mobile grooming van is likely going to be a lower miles per gallon. After a few years, you're going to be having to put more money within it for repairs, maintenance, etc. So the actual method in that way is definitely better if you're a mobile groomer. And once you actually change from the standard method to the actual expenses, you have to stick with that method. You can't go back and forth. You can't say that, oh, I drove more this year, so it looks like I could have more expense. Usually it's not the case, but you can't go back and forth like that. And again, the vehicle log, you definitely want to have that. I suggest that for mobile groomers, really use your calendar so that when you are going to different clients, maybe have something of how much mileage it would be using Google Maps. You can say that, well, I'm going to groom this client and the mileage from my home to this client and back is this amount, and have all that information so that, again, if ever asked, you can provide that to the IRS. For those that are using the standard method, my suggestion is to use, if you can, one of the online apps like MileIQ. You might also want to just get yourself a vehicle log where you're just putting all the information. Vehicle expenses, especially if they are for non-mobile grooming businesses, can be a red flag. It's expected that when you have a mobile grooming business, you're going to be driving to your different clients. But if you're using your vehicle and you have a salon, they want to make sure that you're not including the commuting costs, and they want to make sure that you have documentation for that. Pretty much, just in summary, I just wanted to say how important it is to keep detailed records of your expenses. Work with a tax professional, especially if it is in the beginning of your business, because you don't know what you don't know, and a tax professional can actually help you. Plus, tax laws change. They can change from year to year. There can be a change in a specific area. You want to make sure that you have that. And also, there may be other deductions that we did not cover But by working with the tax professional, they may be able to say, well, did you include this? And then you can say that, well, I did pay for that, but I paid for that out of my own pocket. If you have a receipt and it's considered a necessary and ordinary expense, this is something that can also help you. And if you have the deduction, it lowers your net income, which lowers your taxes. So a tax professional can help. And going always to TurboTax because you feel that it is cheaper than working with a professional, you could be missing out on some things that would more than pay for any cost to your tax preparer. Again, please don't forget that if you like this video, please hit the like button. If you see that this video can help a fellow grooming business, please share it. Comment if you have any suggestions for future videos, and subscribe so that you are alerted when additional videos come out. Don't forget, if you have an LLC or a corporation, you want to make sure that you get the beneficial owner in reporting completed. And for some deadlines on the BOI reporting, if you set up your LLC before January 1st of 2024, you actually have through December 31st of 2024. And if you do a LLC within 2024, they give you 90 days from when you have it established, and then going forward it will be 30 days. And remember, if you have any kinds of changes, whether changes in memberships, address, whatever, you have 30 days to make that complete. I will include in the video for the BOI reporting so that you can actually do that on your own.